It started like any normal Tuesday morning at Adelaide Cottage, but something was different. Something quiet, heavy, and unseen. The sunlight came gently through the curtains and the birds outside sang like they always did. But inside the cottage, a storm was about to begin. Princess Catherine woke up at 6:30 a.m. just like she had every day for years. She reached for her phone on the bedside table, expecting to see a message or maybe the weather. But instead, she froze. Her screen showed 17 missed calls, all from her private secretary. Her heart jumped. No one called that many times unless something was seriously wrong. She looked across the room. Prince William was already awake, standing silently near the window. He was still wearing his pajamas. He wasn't moving, just staring out into the garden like he was waiting for something. He turned slowly when he heard her move. His face said it all. Pale, tired, worried. He had not slept. Catherine sat up in bed, her eyes locked on his. "Is it the results?" she asked softly. William nodded. He walked over and sat down beside her, close enough to hold her hand. His hands were shaking a little. His voice was barely a whisper. Yes. The test results came back. That one sentence made the world stop for a second. Catherine had known this moment was coming. 3 weeks ago, her doctor had found something strange during a routine checkup. She hadn't felt sick, but they said more tests were needed. She had waited every single day since then, smiling in public, playing with her children, attending royal events, all while hiding a growing fear in her chest. She took a deep breath. "Tell me," she said, squeezing William's hand tighter. "They found cancer cells," he said quietly. His voice cracked slightly on the word cancer, as if just saying it made it more real. Catherine felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She had been ready for bad news, but hearing the actual word, cancer, made her body go cold. She closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her children, George, Charlotte, Louis. What would this mean for them? "What kind?" she asked, trying to stay calm. She had learned long ago how to stay composed in the hardest moments, smiling at cameras, staying kind to strangers, always holding her head high. But nothing had prepared her for this. "They think it started in your abdomen," William said. "But the doctor says it's early. They caught it in time. There are treatments, good treatments." He was trying to sound strong, but she could hear the fear in his voice. She nodded slowly. "We'll get through this," she whispered. But inside, her heart was racing. Early detection sounded good, but cancer was still cancer. She looked toward the hallway where the children were still sleeping. "We need to tell them," she said, her voice full of love and worry. "Not yet," William answered. "Let's talk to the doctors first, understand everything. Then we can explain it to them properly." Catherine agreed, though she knew deep down the children had already noticed the tension in the house. Kids feel things. They see the way. Their parents whisper in the kitchen or hold each other a little longer at bedtime. They hear the quiet sobs behind locked doors. They dressed quickly. Their team had already arranged a private appointment with Dr. Morrison, the same doctor who had handled Catherine's earlier tests. The hospital visit was kept secret. They didn't want the public to know yet. Everything needed to be handled carefully, both for privacy and for the sake of their children. Dr. Morrison greeted them with a calm smile. The meeting room was private and quiet. Catherine sat with her hands folded in her lap, holding tightly to William's fingers as the doctor explained the full details. The cancer was real, but it was found early. They would begin chemotherapy first to shrink the tumor, then surgery, then more chemo. The whole process would take around 6 months. 6 months. Catherine nodded while listening, but part of her mind drifted. She looked out the window. People were walking on the streets outside. Cars were passing. The world was moving, but hers had suddenly stopped. On the way home, she stared out the window, watching life happen, parents laughing with their children, people sipping coffee, dogs being walked. Everything looked normal, but for her, everything had changed. William glanced at her, driving slowly. "Are you okay?" "I'm scared," she said honestly. "I'm scared for the kids. I'm scared about everything." He reached over and took her hand. "We'll face it together." And in that quiet car, on a normal Tuesday morning that no longer felt normal, Catherine knew this was the beginning of something very hard. But she wasn't alone. It had only been a few hours since they heard the word cancer, but it felt like days had passed. Everything looked the same when they got back home, but nothing felt the same anymore. The kitchen still smelled like toast and jam, and sunlight still poured in through the windows, but the air was heavier, quiet, careful. The children were already at the breakfast table when Prince William and Princess Catherine came in. George was reading the back of the cereal box. Charlotte was humming a tune while drawing flowers on a napkin. Little Louis was busy trying to open his yogurt by himself. Everything looked normal, but Catherine felt like she was watching a dream from the outside. Charlotte was the first to notice something. She looked up, eyes soft with concern. "Are you okay, Mummy?" she asked in her small, clear voice. Catherine smiled gently and sat beside her. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just a little tired." It was a half-truth, the kind of answer parents give when they want to protect their children. Louis leaned across the table to give her a sticky hug. George didn't say anything, but he looked at his parents carefully like he was reading them. He always did that. Even at 11 years old, he noticed more than they wished he would. The school bags were packed, and the morning moved forward like always. But Catherine and William exchanged glances across the table. Their hearts were no longer inside this normal world. They were somewhere else now, in hospital rooms and test reports and fears that couldn't be spoken aloud just yet. Later that afternoon, Catherine waited in the car while William parked under the oak tree near Lambrook School. This was a part of their life that always brought her peace. The school pickup, the smell of crayons and glue on their children's clothes, the excited footsteps running toward them. But today felt different. Catherine had a scarf wrapped around her neck. She had started wearing scarves more often, not to hide anything yet, but because they made her feel stronger, more put together, in a world that now felt shaky. "I don't know how long we can keep it from them," she said, adjusting her scarf. William sighed. "I know. George asked me this morning why we've been whispering so much." "What did you tell him?" "I said we were planning a surprise." Catherine gave a soft laugh, but it faded quickly. "He won't believe that for long." The school bell rang and the gates opened. A flood of children ran out into the sunshine, and the noise of laughter and backpacks being zipped filled the air. Louis was the first to reach them, dragging his school bag and smiling from ear to ear. "Mummy? Daddy? Guess what I did today?" Catherine helped him into the car, her heart full and aching at the same time. She let him talk freely about his day, a drawing he made, a joke from his friend, a paper airplane that flew across the classroom. His little voice was like music. Charlotte came next, holding hands with her friend Sophia. They were deep in conversation about their project on endangered animals. When she saw her mother, she smiled brightly and ran forward. "Can Sophia come over this weekend?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. "We'll see," Catherine said gently. "Maybe." She didn't want to promise anything, not when she didn't know how the next few days would go. Then came George, slower, quieter, serious as always. He got into the car without much of a word and looked out the window. Catherine watched him from the front seat. He was thinking, watching, waiting. The ride home was filled with noise from the younger two. Charlotte asked about getting a pet hamster. Louis talked about dinosaurs. But George stayed quiet. Once or twice Catherine caught him watching her in the rearview mirror. At home, Catherine moved through her routines. Snack time, story time, picking up school shoes from the hallway. Everything felt normal on the outside, but inside her, it was a storm. While cutting apples for their snack, Charlotte looked up suddenly. "Mummy, are you sure you're okay?" Catherine paused, knife in hand. Why do you ask? You look tired, and you've been hugging us more. Like when Grandma got sick. The words hit her like a soft punch to the chest. Catherine smiled through the tears she didn't let fall. I just love you all very much, she said. Charlotte nodded but kept watching her closely. That night, after the children went to bed, William and Catherine sat in their quiet sitting room. No cameras, no titles, just two parents scared and tired. What if the treatment makes me sick? Catherine whispered. What if I can't hide it? William took her hand and said what they both knew was true. Then we'll tell them. Gently, honestly, they're stronger than we think. Catherine looked out the window. Tomorrow was her first chemo session. A new chapter was about to begin. It was a normal afternoon outside Lamrook School. Parents waited in their cars. Children laughed as they ran out with their school bags swinging behind them. But for Princess Catherine, nothing felt normal anymore. She sat quietly in the passenger seat of their Range Rover. Her eyes followed the happy faces of other parents. Some were on their phones. Some were chatting with other mums. They all looked peaceful, like they were living in a world where nothing scary was hiding. Catherine felt like she was standing behind a glass wall, looking into a life that used to be hers. Prince William parked the car under the same oak tree they had used for years. He turned off the engine and looked at her. Catherine adjusted the silk scarf around her neck, pretending to fix it but really just trying to stay calm. That scarf had become her comfort. She didn't need it yet. No treatment had started. But it made her feel stronger, like armor. George asked me this morning why we were whispering so much, she said quietly. What did you say? William asked, gently watching her face. I told him we were planning a surprise, she answered. He believed it for now. William nodded, but they both knew George was smart. He noticed things. All three of their children had started noticing. The school doors opened and children came running out. Catherine's heart beat faster. It always did now, whenever she saw them. Her babies. Their faces were still full of innocence, still untouched by what was coming. Little Louis was first. His school bag bounced on his back and his tie was half off. Mommy! Daddy! He shouted, smiling wide as he ran to the car. Catherine stepped out quickly and helped him into the back seat. He started talking right away, about his art project, a funny joke from his friend, and the mud on the playground. His voice filled the car like sunlight. She listened to every word. Then came Charlotte, walking hand in hand with her best friend Sophia. The two girls were talking about animals, projects, and something funny that had happened during music class. Hi, Mummy, Charlotte said, hugging her quickly. Can Sophia come over this weekend? We'll see, Catherine replied. She didn't want to make promises she couldn't keep, not now. Last came George. He walked slowly, his face thoughtful. At only 11, he already had the quiet seriousness of his father. He got into the car without much talk. Catherine watched him in the rearview mirror. He kept glancing at her. His eyes were full of questions he hadn't asked yet. The drive home was full of noise from Louis, a little laughter from Charlotte, and silence from George. Catherine didn't say much. She just listened. She tried to soak in the sound of their voices like it was music. At home, the children sat at the kitchen counter as always. Catherine prepared their usual afternoon snack, apples, biscuits, and warm milk. This small routine felt like a gift. Mommy, are you feeling okay? Charlotte asked suddenly. Catherine paused with the knife in her hand. Of course, darling. Why do you ask? You look tired, Charlotte said softly. And you've been hugging us more. The words hit Catherine like a wave. She smiled, but inside, her heart was aching. I always hug you, she said gently. Because I love you very much. But it's different now, Charlotte whispered. Like when Grandma got sick. The kitchen went quiet. Louis was still building a tower with his apple slices. George didn't say a word, but Catherine could feel his eyes watching her. That night after bedtime stories and soft kisses goodnight, Catherine and William sat alone in their private room. The lights were low. Outside, the world was quiet. "My first treatment is tomorrow," Catherine said softly. William nodded. He had already arranged for Catherine's mum, Carol, to pick up the children. He was planning to stay by Catherine's side the whole day. "What if I can't hide it from them anymore?" she asked. Her voice trembled. "What if I get sick right away? What if they see me weak?" "Then we tell them," William said firmly. "We sit down and explain everything. They're strong, Catherine, just like you." She didn't answer. Right away. She looked down at her hands. She had always been the calm one, the smiling princess, the strong mother. But now she wasn't sure what strength looked like. "I want to get through the first treatment," she said at last. "I want to see how I feel. Then we'll talk to them." William took her hand in his. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together." She nodded slowly, and in that quiet room they held on to each other, not just as prince and princess, but as two parents, two hearts, trying to protect the world they loved most. The morning came too quickly. The sun had just started to rise, but Princess Catherine was already awake. She lay still for a few extra minutes, holding on to the quiet. This might be the last morning for a long time, where she would feel somewhat normal. Today was the start of her treatment. She slowly sat up, careful not to wake William, who had only just fallen asleep after tossing and turning most of the night. Catherine looked at the clock. 6:15 a.m. In just a few hours, her life would change again, this time not with words, but with medicine. With needles. With the unknown. She chose her clothes carefully. Soft trousers, a cashmere sweater, and her favorite scarf. Her hair went into a loose ponytail. Simple, calm, strong. She looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't look sick. Not yet. But inside her heart was heavy. Downstairs, the kitchen was quiet. Catherine made toast and poured orange juice into 3 small glasses. George's school bag was by the door. Charlotte's pink water bottle was on the counter. Louis's toy dinosaur lay on the floor where he had dropped it the night before. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. William came downstairs, fully dressed, but quiet. He kissed Catherine's cheek gently. "Are you ready?" She nodded. The children entered one by one, still sleepy, still in their pajamas. Catherine smiled as they sat down at the table. Charlotte asked for more jam. Louis complained about the crust on his toast. George sat silently, watching his parents again. "Are you going somewhere today?" George asked suddenly, eyes on his mother. Catherine paused for a second. "Yes, sweetheart, I have an appointment in London." "Can we come with you?" Charlotte asked. "Not today," Catherine replied. "But Grandma Carol is coming over. She'll pick you up from school and stay with you until we get back." The children nodded, accepting the answer, but Catherine saw the worry in George's eyes again. She walked over and kissed each of them on the forehead. "Be good for Grandma. And remember, I love you more than anything." As she and William left the house, she looked back once more. Louis was at the window, waving with both hands. Charlotte blew her a kiss. George just stood there watching. The drive to the hospital was quiet. William held her hand the whole way. In the hospital room, everything was clean and quiet. The nurse spoke kindly and explained each step. Catherine listened, nodded, and smiled politely. But her thoughts were far away. At home, in her kitchen, beside her children. As the treatment began, she closed her eyes. William sat beside her, never letting go of her hand. She felt the medicine enter her veins. A cold rush, a slow burn. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just breathed. Later, that day they returned home. Catherine felt tired but not sick. Not yet. But everything inside her felt different, like her body was no longer just hers. Like something had begun that she couldn't stop now. The house smelled like warm food. Carol had made pasta. The children rushed to greet them. "Did everything go okay?" George asked, his eyes full of questions. "Yes," William said gently. "Everything went well. But it was time." After dinner, Catherine asked the children to join her and William in the sitting room. The lights were soft. The fire was lit. She sat between Charlotte and George, holding Louis in her lap. "I need to tell you something very important," she began. Her voice was calm but warm. George leaned forward. Charlotte's eyes filled with worry. Louis looked up with his big, innocent eyes. "I've been feeling unwell lately," Catherine said, "and the doctors found something in my body that shouldn't be there." "You're sick?" George asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said gently. "I have something called cancer, but we found it early, and I'm getting treatment. That's why Daddy and I have been so quiet lately." "Are you going to get better?" Charlotte asked, tears welling up. "I'm going to try very hard," Catherine said, "and the doctors are helping me. But I might be tired sometimes. I might not always feel good, but I will still be here. I will always love you. Always." Louis held her hand tightly. "Can we help you feel better?" Catherine smiled through her tears. "Just by being yourselves. By hugging me. By smiling. By being brave." That night the children stayed a little longer before bed. George hugged her harder than usual. Charlotte kissed her on both cheeks. Louis wrapped his arms around her waist and didn't want to let go. Later, when the house was quiet, Catherine sat by the window looking out at the stars. William stood behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "We told them," she said softly, "and they understand," he replied. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not just from fear, but from love, from knowing that even in the hardest moments they were still a family, still holding on, still facing everything together.